Today, we're going to talk about something that's, well, it's deeply personal. It's a question that can be really painful, and honestly one that so many of us have had to face. That awful struggle of trying to let go when your heart and your mind are pulling you in completely different directions.
So, this entire explainer is actually built around a real, anonymous question that someone shared. To really get to the heart of it, I'm just going to read it to you, exactly as it was written. I need a side view. If a person is constantly in our thoughts, are we also in his? We had a 7-8-year relationship. Our last intimate contact was a year ago. In the summer, we were at a joint event where he was with his new girlfriend, but he was looking at me the whole time. He doesn't post anything about his relationship on social networks, and he always looks at my stories and almost immediately. I have a very strong inner feeling that he thinks about me and wants contact. Then comes the reason that if he wanted you, there'd be actions. And then I start to find excuses for him. The problem is that I can neither continue with him, because he doesn't choose me, nor without him. I've already entered into relationships with worthy men, ready for serious relationships 3 times, and at some point I emotionally return to him and start to annoy the person next to me, and I want a family and children. I work with a psychologist, but I still can't let go of this love. I know it may be a common problem, but I would appreciate any opinion or recommendation for a book/approach. Thanks.
You know, what you just heard, it isn't just one person's story, is it? It's this incredibly raw and honest description of a dilemma that so many people get stuck in. You're caught between a past you just can't seem to release and a future you desperately want but can't quite seem to reach. And at the very center of all this pain is this one hopeful, just agonizing question. It's the thought we all cling to when every bit of logic is telling us to move on. We just can't help but wonder, is the space they're taking up in our mind a two-way street? And here we are, we've arrived at a very difficult but absolutely necessary truth. The honest answer to that question is, not necessarily. And I know that can be tough to hear, but understanding why that is, that's the real first step toward finding some peace. It's actually less about them and a whole lot more about what's happening inside of you. What this person is describing is a perfect example of what we call an unfinished emotional cycle. From a psychological perspective, their mind is basically stuck in a holding pattern because the relationship never got that clear, definitive ending, no firm choice or final rejection. That cycle just stays open. And so the mind keeps waiting and waiting for a conclusion that might never actually arrive. All right, so let's try to decode these mixed signals that are fueling this whole inner conflict, because this is where all that hope and all that confusion really get tangled up and keep a person stuck. This slide really breaks it down, doesn't it? On one side, you have real actions, things that require commitment, vulnerability, a real choice. But on the other side, we've got what you might call signals without responsibility. Watching your stories, those ambiguous looks across a room, keeping a new relationship on the down low. These things create this illusion of connection, but without any of the risk that comes with making a real choice. And this metaphor just says it all. It's exactly like they're keeping the door to the past just slightly ajar. It gives you just enough hope to stop you from closing it for good, but they never actually walk through it and commit. They basically maintain access to you without ever truly entering your life again. You see, this whole situation creates this painful war inside of you. As this table shows, one part of you, your reason, knows exactly what it wants. Stability, family, a future. But your heart is just so attached to that familiar feeling, that old hope of maybe finally being chosen. And who gets caught in the crossfire? Any new healthy relationships, which end up unfairly paying the price for this conflict that's still raging inside you. And this brings us to a really crucial point. Staying in this emotional limbo, it's not free. There is a very real and often very high price that you pay for waiting around. Let's just look at this from a purely objective standpoint for a second. By keeping that door ajar, the other person gets a lot of benefits, right? You stay emotionally available, kind of like an invisible backup plan. Your continued focus on them, it validates their ego, makes them feel significant. And the kicker is, they get all of this without having to risk a thing or make any kind of real commitment to you. So what's the price that you pay? Well, as the original post made so heartbreakingly clear, it's sabotaging new, potentially wonderful relationships. It's putting your own life goals, like having a family, on hold indefinitely. And maybe worst of all, it's that chronic, exhausting feeling of being at war with yourself, just fundamentally unhappy. So, the big question is, how do you break free?
How do you finally close this painful, unfinished cycle? Well, the key is having a real framework for healing.
We can break this healing process down into 3 main steps. First, we have to separate the idea of love from emotional attachment. Second, we need to achieve what I call radical clarity about what's really going on. And third, you have to consciously limit the things that keep feeding this cycle. Let's start with step 1. This one requires some deep and, sometimes difficult honesty. You have to ask yourself this question: do I truly want this person back? Or do I just want the pain of not being chosen to finally end? Often when we're really honest, we realize it's not actually the person we miss, but the relief we think we'll feel if the rejection just stops hurting. Okay, step 2 is all about that radical clarity and internalizing this one single idea. It's painful, I know, but it is also incredibly liberating. Here it is. A non-choice is a choice. Accepting that they have already made their decision through their inaction, that is what gives you the power to finally close this emotional cycle on your own terms. And finally, step 3. Look, this isn't just about willpower. This is about your brain's wiring. Neurologically, every single time they watch your story, every glance you get across a room, your brain gets a tiny little hit of dopamine. It's like a microdose of hope. And that hope, it functions just like an addiction. To break the cycle, you have to starve the addiction. You have to limit those little hits wherever you possibly can. When you get right down to it, this whole process is really about redefining where your loyalty lies. It's about taking that powerful sense of loyalty you have, shifting it away from the past, and pointing it directly toward your own future. Here is such a powerful way to reframe this entire situation. This person, they are not a bridge to the life you want, to the family, the security, all of it. No, they are a traffic jam. They are the obstacle that's blocking the road and literally preventing you from ever getting to where you want to go. And we're going to end on this thought. You're not weak for feeling this way. You are an incredibly loyal person. But the most crucial realization you can have is this: loyalty to someone who consistently doesn't choose you eventually becomes a betrayal of yourself. So the most important choice you can make right now is the choice to finally be loyal to you.